If you're interested in learning to trade on Betfair, then you've arrived at the right place. Head on over to our website where you can download a free trial of BetAngel. And on that website, you will also find the best Betfair trading forum available. It's full of images, illustrations, and downloadable files. If you want a detailed, structured Betfair trading course, then head on over to the Academy where those are available. But you may also want to go to BetAngel TV where we have over 200 hours of sports trading videos. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and also click on the bell icon if you want notification of when new videos are released. So thank you very much for the questions that you put on the Q&A video. There were an awful lot of them. So it's impossible for me to do every single one, but probably what I'll try and do is integrate some of those questions into future video sets that I do. And answer them over a period of time. But there are some questions I can give you quick answers to or point you in the right direction. And there are videos that I've produced already that will go into more depth on some of these particular questions because they are deserving of a much deeper answer. I sort of expected to get a question like this that was going to be popular, which is what is the biggest indication of a way a horse is going to move pre-race? I have done videos on this. If you look at the videos that relate to two simple trades that anybody can do, that is probably the most guaranteed way that you're going to know what's going to happen to the price of a runner. There are so many facets to the way that trading works and the way that the markets work that generally speaking, you cannot say, the one thing that is going to do really well. It's a sort of a running joke, I think, in the industry that there's a make a million button somewhere, and if only you knew what that make a million button was, you could press it and earn incredible amounts of money very quickly at no risk or hassle. But it's not like that. The market is an amalgam of many things, and it's your judgment on that that is important. However, if you look at two simple trades that anybody can do, then you will find that that is the one that gives you one of the biggest clues as to which way or the direction that the price is going to go. Trading with a big backer in the market, you may want to watch that video as well. How do you record your trades and what do you record? Do you enter data directly after a trade or do you look at the end of the day and so on? That got a lot of upvotes as well. So I have done a video on data mining. But if I answer this question sort of quickly, I say quickly, it's very difficult to say something quickly when you have a level of knowledge that can go much deeper. But I record everything basically. So I'll record the market using BetAngel and I'll store that data. I may go back and look at it. But you may have seen me posting on Twitter now and again. If you would have done this on this day, then you would have earned that much. So I'm monitoring the market from a broad perspective in terms of what's happening on that day, but also specific trades that I do. Because I'm interested in how much does the market move, and if I'm 5 minutes out and I do a trade, how much can I expect and where do I think it's going to go? So I look at the market at a granular level, but I also look at my own trading as well. But from a top level perspective, what I do is I'm interested in when do I enter the market, when do I exit, and what is how often do I win, how often do I lose, and how much do I make when I win and how much do I make when I lose, because those are variables I can play with. So if I know my strike rate is 60%, then I probably realize that there's probably more upside to that. But if my strike rate is 80%, then I suggest that maybe, depending upon your trading style, you may not be able to nudge it much higher. But that trading style will be subject to what you do. So if you're doing a longer term trend, you're probably going to get it right less often than if you're doing a shorter term trend. Why? Because if you're forecasting the next price movement, that's a high strike rate strategy. If you're forecasting a price move of 10 or 20 ticks, that's an entirely different strategy and a bit harder to achieve. So you have to think of the market as being 50-50 of getting something right, and your objective is to try and push that 50-50 higher. It's not as simple as that. There are loads of other layers behind it. But what I'm interested in is just about everything to do with what's happening within the market. So BetAngel gathers data for me when I'm trading, and I will tend to review that at the end of the day. But I'll very often sit down and plow through enormous tons of data just to have a look at the market from a broader perspective. But what I do, and the trick that I tend to use the most, is I use a BetAngel bot to actually trade the market for me. That tells me when it opened a trade, when it closed, and whether it was in profit or not. And from that, I can derive loads of information about how the market's traded. And that can be for good or for bad. So if I've had a bad day, I can look at that data and go, okay, that's why I had a bad day. But I could use it also to look at it and say, well, I could have done better here. How could I have spotted that? So yeah, I gather lots of different bits of data. How do you prepare to trade? What's your daily routine of research and analysis? Well, actually, I tend to do very little. I know that sounds odd, but it's a function of having been in the market for so long. So when I look at a card for tomorrow, for example, I can have a quick glance across that card and I can generally know what the characteristics of the racing are likely to be, how the markets are likely to trade, and probably what they're going to do. But it's only when I get to that narrow window just before the start of the race that I can really actively trade it. So because I trade order flow, I'm not looking at form, I'm not saying this is what I need to do and when specifically. I make a general judgment on the market, and then when I arrive in the market, what I'm actually looking to do is to see if that idea, that concept, that theme, I often call it, was correct. But when I'm active and on the market, it's not impossible for me to change my mind based upon what I see. But for example, when I look at a card in the afternoon, and again, there is a video on this, picking, I think it's called something like picking the best quality races to trade or something like that, or there's something out there that I did that generally summarizes my early prep. When you look through those markets, there are some markets that you will know how to trade immediately. I sort of categorize them into two chunks immediately, and then I start looking at individual characteristics. So there are some races that I love and some races that I hate. But if you give me a very low quality, small field, uncompetitive race at a jumps course in the winter with two favourites at similar prices, I don't tend to like those markets. But if you give me a very high quality race in the summer that's a group one with a short priced favourite, then I know I've got the potential to demolish that if I get it right. But of course, you're not going to get it right every time. So I tend to approach the markets from that perspective. I look for obvious targets and races that I'm not so keen on, because then I will strike out the races that I'm not so keen on and focus on the big races. And if the day is proving to be a little bit tricky and the markets feel weak, I may just drop some of those harder races, because if I struggle with them historically anyway, there's no way that I'm going to miraculously make them much better on a difficult day. So that generally is my approach in terms of what I look on a day-to-day basis. I don't plough through form and all of those other things. It's all about reading the market that's key to me, as opposed to getting some great, fantastic, unbelievable level of insight from other information that's available. So the next question on this is about data as well. So I think it's worth doing a separate video. I've recorded this video already, but I'm not sure that I can actually cover everything that's required in one video, or whether I'm going to hit the nail on the head immediately. So it may take a series of them. And what I may even do is a section on the Academy, because I think it may take a fair amount of time to do a full set of videos to talk about data collection and data mining. But in essence, with data collection, what I'm looking to do is model the market. I'm looking to understand the way that the market behaves, why it behaves that way, so that I can anticipate what's about to happen next. So the best analogy I can use is crossing a road. You look to see if the traffic's coming, and then you have to anticipate whether it's safe to cross. Doing exactly the same with trading. So what I'm effectively doing is sitting on the side of the road every day, watching the cars that go past, figuring out that there are quiet and busy times, and then deciding when to cross the road. So that's why I do a lot of data collection. I'm trying to anticipate what is about to happen. And that sort of answers the question from John about why is it important to collect data, because you trade order flow. There's your answer. I'm trying to understand the way that the market works so I can sit inside it effectively and anticipate what it's going to do. And just before I recorded this section, because I'm stopping the video frequently, this sort of answers the next question, which is, what do successful traders know that unsuccessful ones don't? There are two answers to that, really. Well, maybe three, actually. Because you've got strategies and tactics. So strategies I would define as the modelling element. You're trying to understand the way that the market works so that you can breathe it. Usually what I tend to say is that the market sings to me. So just before I recorded this section, I stopped the recording, turned around and got 50 quid out of the 2 at Wincanton. Now the ability to do that is actually pretty rare, But I'm totally comfortable with that, and part of that is just down to the amount of time that I've been doing it. So when you say, what do successful traders know or do? Strategies and tactics. Strategies are what you're going to do in the market. It could be scalping, it could be trend trading, it could be any type of general strategy. The tactic is how you deploy that particular strategy. But then on the other side of the equation, you've got to manage the money and the trade execution. But you also need to look at the psychology of things as well. So if you can get all of those components together, then you'll be a good trader. But if you're missing one of those components, then you'll probably start to run into trouble at some point or another. Now, it's unlikely you will get all of those immediately. It would be a surprise if you could do all of that immediately. But that's your aim, is to encompass all of those things. So when you do that, then you become, you operate on a different level. But for example, the psychology of trading is an important part of what I do as well. So I'm not afraid to take risk. I don't beat myself up when things go badly, and I don't over-congratulate myself when things go right. It's a balance there. I'm looking to achieve a quantified risk, effectively. But I think the way that I would summarize it to you in terms of why... I think there are different levels of traders as well. Don't believe everybody is at the same level. There's a vast difference between somebody like me and somebody else that comes down to experience, knowledge, how hard you're prepared to work at it, and so on. It's like anything. Roger Federer is very different from your club tennis captain. And yet he will claim to be as good as Roger Federer if only he'd had the right break. So there are varying levels in that scale, is what I'm trying to say. But for me, the market sings to me. I've rehearsed the money management, the staking, the strategies, the tactics, my own approach to the market in terms of psychology and execution and all of those things. But for me, the market sings. And when it's playing a beautiful song, I know what the next verse is going to be because I've heard that song 1,000 times. But sometimes the market, it doesn't sing to you. It's just complete noise. But then your approach and your strategy to dealing with that is you just say, well, I'm going to turn the noise off. I'm not going to trade that market, or you're going to be much more defensive. So professional traders have the ability to look at a market and start to pick up on what song it's playing, and then the ability to be able to anticipate what the next verse is. And maybe there's even going to be a few choruses in there as well, giving you the opportunity to do it more than once. So yeah, I think that's the sort of difference. Probably practice is one of the biggest things, that screen time, or, but I would say one of the areas that I'm very, very different in is that I can describe the market in beautiful detail. So I've gone to the point of creating equations to encapsulate what I'm looking at so that I can better understand it, and then that leads me off in directions that people who won't go to that lengths will never be able to find, simply because I can start fiddling around and playing with different aspects of that to take me to the next level. So yeah, slightly long-winded answer there, but I hope that gave you an answer there. Tracking results. There's quite a few data questions here, so I think it may be suffice to go off and do some videos on data. There's another question here about what do you look at earlier in the day. There is a video talking through a few things on that. I will have to find the exact name of that video. Have you, Ben, this is a good question actually. Ben says, have you considered applying machine learning methods? I have, and we did neural nets 15 years ago, probably. It was a long time ago. And so I'm just keeping an eye on the next race over here in case I want to trade it. I've decided I'm not going to trade this race, so I'm just keeping an eye on it. We looked at neural nets a long time ago, but we noticed that there were a variety of flaws. So if you look at manual trading, there are things that manual traders do that automated things can't do. But there are automated things, there are things that automated routines can do that manual traders can't do. So where my trading has changed over the years, and you've seen this within the BetAngel product as well, we've moved on from doing just manual trading to having complex and advanced automation. We also have servants that sit smack bang in the middle, so that gives you the best of both worlds, because you can say, I know what I want to do, but I'm going to need automation to do it for me. There you go. So yeah, doing a mixture of all those things can actually work pretty well. The problem that you have with machine learning concepts is if it's a game of Go or Breakout, you've probably seen all of the AlphaGo stuff. I've watched the documentaries and I've met some of the people there, and I've talked around concepts with people who are experts in machine learning. The problem that you tend to have in sports markets is there are lots of unquantifiable, unseeable things. They don't have very firm boundaries around them. So that's where machine learning stuff struggles a bit. However, there are things that it can do, but they're not based around certain aspects that manual traders can do or see. However, if you're actually watching the market, then there's no reason why you couldn't semi-automate it, because you are the trigger, and then you ask the automated stuff to do it for you, or to do that very fast execution and all of those complex things that no human could possibly do. So I think there's a role for each element within the market. But could you get some machine learning to replicate exactly what I do? Probably not. How do you maintain your discipline? Probably the answer to that is, I think I've got, thankfully, because I'm on social media, I've got very good at dealing with rejection and all of that sort of side of things. Some people are geared to wanting to make you fail. And I'm not saying anybody in particular here, but I'm sure you recognise these types of people in life. Very negative, don't want you to succeed, and will do anything to sort of bring you down, or to block your path. And they could be your superior at work, it could be somebody near to you or underneath you or something. And that used to really frustrate me, but when I see that now, I realise that that's actually a flaw within that person and not me. So it makes no difference to me now. It's just water off a duck's back if I get any stress from anybody. And I'm probably quite likely just to go, well, it's your problem. I'm just not going to get involved with it. And you're thinking, well, what does this have to do with discipline? Well, what you tend to find is that discipline is all about coping with sort of adversity. So, if I went into a call centre 30 years ago and was asked to cold call somebody, I probably couldn't have done that. Just the pressure and the difficulty with doing that would have been very hard for me. But, if you dumped me in a call centre now and asked me to phone 10 random people and talk to them, I would probably be able to do that. And the difference that has changed with me is that fear of rejection. When you do something successfully, and you're probably the first person to do that, and then you do it on a scale that nobody's done it before, your confidence goes up. So my confidence has risen over time, but also my ability to judge things. When you look at the way that the world works and you realise just how daft it is most of the time, if you can lift yourself up off of that level, then that may isolate you somewhat, but it gives you a better, easier interpretation of what's going on around you, and that helps you to maintain discipline. So when things go wrong with a trade, I just accept that they've gone wrong. I don't blame anybody. I don't blame the fact that somebody didn't score a goal or that the horse reared at the start or something like that. I'm just going, well, that's part and parcel of what I do. Let's move on. So my elation at a fantastic trade or my despair at a bad one lasts maybe 30 seconds to a minute. I may go off and go for a walk or something temporarily, but I get over things really quickly now, and I think that's probably something that's changed dramatically from me over the years. And that's typically how I maintain discipline. I just don't let emotions overrule what I'm trying to do. And I know, and I've got the confidence that if I just do the same thing repeatedly, consistently over a period of time, it'll all work out. And that's how, and it's reassuring to know that, and that's how I maintain discipline. How much balance do you put in the market on a trade, and how many ticks? That almost requires a separate video, because there's no easy answer to that. If you want a sort of legitimate, quick response to that, is I have no fear in putting my entire balance into the market on one trade on pre-off horse racing. Now there is a risk in that, because if there's a crash or something goes wrong, then I've got a problem. But most people are shocked when I say that. But I'm super confident that unless if I do something really, really stupid, there's no way that I can lose that balance, because I'm only ever going to be trading a tiny positive or negative on that particular balance. But that's a really bad explanation of why, and I think it deserves a separate video on there. Spoofing, I think that's almost a separate video as well, because there is a lot of spoofing that goes on. It's annoying, frustrating, and I think that spoofing should be something that should be frowned upon, because it undermines the structure and the value of the market for people who are placing a bet, people who are trading, whatever. And therefore I don't think really, that people should be spoofing the market. You can use it to your advantage, and therefore I think that that is, again, a separate video. Here's another good question as well. If you haven't already, if you had to choose a market to trade other than horses, which would it be and why? I love football. That's where my whole betting stuff started. I understand the markets really well. I can price football really well, and it has very clearly defined boundaries, although admittedly they are much wider than you would see than pre-race horse racing. But the fact that it's got time value, that there are definable things within the market, makes me feel quite comfortable doing that. I enjoy doing tennis, but that tends to be seasonal for me. I have to make this decision about what do I trade, because I could trade 24/7, but I'm not going to do that. So I quite like that. But I also enjoy golf as well. So I'm quite good at golf, but I tend to just focus on the majors. I don't tend to sit outside of that. But many different types of things interest me. But I'd say probably if you ranked what sports I trade and which ones I like, racing, why? Because there's so much of it. Opportunities every 10 minutes, nearly 365 days a year is perfect. But football, for me, I understand football really well, and I get on with that particular sport, and that would probably come second on the list. But again, it's seasonal. It's only 9 months of the year, perhaps, and therefore other sports will nip it in and around that. But racing is always top of the list for me. I look at racing and I think, well, that's nine. A football match is 9 horse races. So can I get more out of the 9 horse races or 1 football match? So hopefully that explains my sort of level of thinking of that. You predicted at the beginning of the year markets would get more directional stroke swingy. I've certainly noticed this in the markets. Are you finding this true? Yes, I am. And you'd be pleased to know I actually measure it. So I can tell you over a large number of years that the markets are getting more directional stroke swingy. A swing, incidentally, would be it hits one level and then goes to the next and then comes back in the other direction. But both are true. They're holding direction much firmer than they used to, going much wider in directional terms, in terms of volatility, than they used to. But even that volatility within a range is a little bit wider. So that is true. That is true. Probably what I need to do is I've done quite a few of the questions here, but probably what I need to do is stop the video here and then do another part, because this could actually go on for hours. So I think probably what I'll do at this point is just stop the video here and maybe record another follow-up section that can follow in the near future. And there are other videos that I could do typically within here as well. So I think probably it's better for me to park this temporarily and then continue with a few more questions in a separate video.